Smart 24, driving business.
And welcome to Smart Means Business, and today is 10th February. It's exactly 30 minutes past 7 a.m. and I have a copy of the data and New Vision, and we are going to be getting straight to what is in today's papers. Stories such as the commoners in the little bit more is an interest that I'm going to look at. Moving forward again, we see about why he shut up the STEM Academy. If we get more conversation about these little stories that I get, more on the in death. Now, the 7-year-old reportedly preferred a mixed desk, maintain a relationship with a 21-year-old friend and living with her parents, and that led to her death. She was later rushed to Chirudu Hospital, but she couldn't be able to make it. Now, this is a pretty excuse me, this is a pretty interesting story to kickstart the lovers week, or the week of Valentine's, because it just reminds you that at the end of the day you should look out for yourself regardless. There's no need for you to end your life because something is not going the way that you want it to go. And when I talk about this story, of course, we pray for her soul to rest in peace, and we remind the young children out there, or the young students who are recently reported to school, that there is more to life than a love relationship. Moving forward again with this article about her suicide, of course, there is a lot of statistics from the National Population and Housing Census report of 2024 that talked about how many Ugandans have experienced suicidal thoughts within the year 2024 alone. And that amounts to 272,271 people who have had suicidal thoughts over the time. So this only speaks to the mental health level of Uganda's economy, and of course, most of the young people being the ones taken up in these mental health issues. Now, Ndagire was a senior 3 student who ended up ending her life due to a love relationship. However, when we move forward again on conversations around that are making the headlines today, we see the Aga Khan has been laid to rest in Aswan, Egypt. And we should be reminded that the Aga Khan, the fifth, was also the one in charge of the Aga Khan schools in Uganda that have been able to fight a lot of discrimination, segregation, as well as boost Uganda's economy with education that it has been able to give to the economy. So the governor of Aswan presented Prince Rahim Aga Khan V with a symbolic key to the Aswan as a mark of respect. Of course, as a country, we continue to mourn the death of such an individual. However, again, there is an article about how the Aga Khan schools fought racial and gender discrimination. So grab yourself a copy to know more about that. Moving forward again on stories making the headlines today, we see that the NRM caucus fights to force civilians back to the army courts. Now, President Museveni, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, last Friday evening summoned the National Resistance Movement Party caucus to the State House in Entebbe, where he reportedly asked them to support his move to amend the UPDF Act of 2005 so that the army could continue to try civilians in the military court. Of course, this is following all the conversations around the arrest of Dr. Kiza Besigye who so happened to be tried in the military court, and then that brought about grievances and a lot of rejection from a number of people. So that is a story that has been continuing and so happens to be continuing in this day and age. And to get more about it, you know what to do. Moving forward again, we see that there is a Korean scientist who tips Uganda on high cancer rate survival. Now, according to this article, 20%, the cancer rate survival of Uganda is at 20% compared to that of Korea, which is at 70%. Now, when I talk about the survival rate, I mean how many people are able to live with this disease after they've been diagnosed. Now, when it comes to Uganda's scope, only 20% of people are able to survive for a longer period of time, predominantly because of the low infrastructure development we have in the health sector. However, the Professor Jackson, as well as the Korean scientist, urges that when people are diagnosed earlier and given treatment, that could be able to be something that can help them survive this cancer disease. Of course, now cancer is a disease that so happens to apparently be uncurable when it reaches a certain stage, but in the earlier stages there is possibility of getting out of it alive. So when we look into that, of course, I would remind you to continuously take health checks so that you ensure that your health is safe. And as I always say, remember that your health is wealth. And as we begin a new week, be reminded to take good care of yourself. Moving forward again, we see there is an advert about Stanbic Bank, and that is the 10th anniversary National Schools Battle of the Champions that is going to be happening soon. Now, there is also an article about Lukwago and the army court conviction that has been on his back like a monkey, and that is how he refers to it as. However, again, when we see stories on career growth or empowering her, the lady who so happened to win is known as Ainom Gisha, and she confesses to having been shaped by many leaders at the different banks and microfinance institutions that she worked with. And of course, she shares her career story and transformation, as well as the role played by integrity in the way she is working right now. Moving forward again, we see that partnerships will grow hospitality sector in Uganda, and the chairperson of the Uganda Hotels Owner Association, Ms. Jean Byamugaba, says that when international partnerships are made with the local existing companies, there is possibility of growth when it comes to the hospitality sector. Of course, this is not just the hospitality sector, but partnerships are one way you could look into growing your business in the year 2025. Now, moving forward again, we see that government removes NGOs from list of anti-money laundering reporting. And under the new compliance arrangement, commercial banks are obliged to monitor NGOs' financial transactions. And this is because, according to Theo Plain, a South African economist based in Oxford Economics Africa, says that many NGOs have urged that restrictions on NGOs are too broad with excessive red tapes, which hinders their work. Of course, this is an interesting article, so grab yourself a copy of the Daily Monitor to get more intel on that. Moving forward again, we see that NSSF members are investing in midterm funds, in investment schemes, and maybe a little bit on the international scope. We see that Trump's policy may entrench securation of immigration, and that is simply because a lot has come up with the new Trump administration. For example, the fact that if you were a pregnant lady anywhere outside the United States of America, and your goal was probably to give birth to your child within the states, they are looking into scrapping off that kind of citizenship by birth. And so that means that a number of people are going to be impacted, because there is a lot of people who want to have that security for their children. So birth by citizenship by birth is going to be scrapped off in the Trump administration. So moving forward again, we see that how Trump's order affects inclusivity when it comes to him only recognizing two sexes, that being, or two genders, that being the male and the female gender. And of course, that brings in talk of humanitarian, just human rights as well. So that is how Trump's order affects inclusivity. And of course, that is an article in the Daily Monitor. Moving forward again, we see Trump aid freeze is a wake-up call. And that is an article from Mr. Nathan Ware. And of course, when I look at this, Uganda alone lost its foreign aid from the United States of America when it comes to HIV. World Health Organizations, not even just Uganda alone, but the whole world at large has lost out on all of this, at least for the next 90 days. Maybe right now it's standing at about 80 days as Trump's administration revises its external or foreign policy expenditure. And so that is a call to home countries on how they can be able to still survive and navigate their way into this step back by the United States of America. Moving forward again, we see the impending global war, and that is simply between the United States of America as well as the rest of the world, including the economic integration known as the BRICS. Yes. However, when it comes to real estate and healthy living, there is a lot. Today's article is coming in from someone's experience as a caregiver at Mulago Referral Hospital. And they say a little bit maybe about that through the pain, the struggles, and the endless waiting, I witnessed the resilience of patients, the unwavering dedication of a few nurses, and the small but powerful moments of kindness that kept hope alive. Now, of course, that is the situation that is happening in one of our very big government-aided hospitals in Uganda's economy. And maybe a little bit more on the last article I can look at is closing the gender gap in science, and that is including women into this space. And maybe a little bit about that is that women play a critical role in scientific innovation. However, today's statistics show worldwide that only in 1 in 3 scientists is a woman, and this is because of the lack of gender equality in science as a result of structural challenges and patriarchal tendencies in our societies, which limit scientific progress and the country's development. So that and more is what you will have information on when you grab yourself a copy of today's Daily Monitor. However, when we switch to the New Vision and to take a look at the stories that are making the headlines there, we see that over 3,000 caregivers have been rendered jobless. That is simply because of a number of issues that we shall be discussing a little bit more later as we go into the New Vision. However, we also see that why government is closing all HIV clinics. And moving forward again, we see that East African leaders call for ceasefire in Democratic Republic of Congo, and financial officials interdicted, as well as the Lion Boss spearheads humanitarian efforts. Now, that is what is on the front page of the New Vision. However, let's get a look at what these stories are made up of as we go ahead. Yes. Starting off with the first page, we see the Harvest Expo, which is happening in Uganda space. And students are urged to attend and learn farming. And talking about this, students need to be self-sustaining. If one fails to succeed in education, they can still live happily ever after through agriculture. Now, looking at this, of course, we look at harnessing the agriculture department of Uganda's economy, because it is one that is predominantly hiring a number of people, both. It is just one that has over time been helping a number of people to earn a living through subsistence farming as well as commercial farming. But as of this day and age, the government as well as everyone else advises people to be able to embrace it for commercial purposes so that they can be able to make a living out of it. That is why we see that young people especially are being given the skills and knowledge to equip them for this journey ahead, so that they can be job creators and non-job seekers. Moving forward again, we see about an article about how the government closes all HIV clinics, and this move also leaves antenatal or the antiretroviral drug pharmacies closed. And a little bit about that is that with the US President Donald Trump suspending all USAID programs, the government has decided to close the majority age-run HIV clinics as it considers the next move. And this will lead to a freeze, or the freeze has left over 3,000 health provider jobless. Moving forward again, we see that the embattled financial officials are being interdicted, and the NRM caucus withdraw of UPDF Amendment Bill of 2024. However, again, we see that Democratic Republic of Congo conflict and what EAC leaders agreed upon. Moving forward again, we see that the bodies of the SADC soldiers killed in DRC Congo have been evacuated to Kampala. Now, there is a lot going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and there is a lot, as I said, this looks into M23 soldiers who recently took up or invaded Goma, one of the cities in southern DRC. Now, a lot about this space is including Rwanda's inclusion in the fight. So all of us being members of an economic integration known as the East African Community, of course, this brings about instability and freezes a lot of economic trade within the borders of all the countries involved in the East African Community. Given that we are in the same, we are just neighboring ourselves really close, so that means that a lot is already affected by the occurrings that are taking place in DRC. Now, this war has been going on for quite a while, and it is affecting us, as I earlier said. And earlier, as the year started, we saw the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, trying to address this issue, claiming that they should stop pointing fingers at Rwanda and instead point fingers at international bodies, because he claims that the real reason as to why this ongoing war in the Democratic Republic of Congo is going on is not because of Rwanda, but rather there is a lot of hidden agenda as to why this situation is happening. But the fact that it is harming or slowing down integration within the East African Community, of course, this issue has to be addressed very soon. Now, of course, when we talk about the East African Community, the situation in DRC alone is not the only one affecting the economic prosperity of the East African Community. We also look at the fact that there is lack of trust within the East African Community. For example, take a look at the recent arrest of Dr. Kizza Besigye, as well as Tanzanian journalists who were both arrested in the capital of Nairobi, that is Kenya, and taken back home forcefully to be able to attend to court rulings that they probably have a little bit of information on or none at all. So these situations alone are what are affecting the East African Community, and we hope that they can be able to come to a halt, because at the end of the day, we need each other to survive in this day and age. Moving forward again, we see that the court-martial only serving military officers. I earlier talked about this conversation, but you can still grab yourself a copy of the New Vision to read more intel on what is going on in that space. Also, the government tables bill seeking to extend Bujagali Power Dam tax exemption. Moving forward again, we see that the UR boss vows to fight new fraud syndicates, and the boss urged the leaders of the clearing and forwarding fraternity to report, dismiss, and prosecute the corrupt agents. Mukono small scale and intermediary enterprises urged to embrace e-commerce. This includes learning basic digital skills, training for the informal sector, and micro and small enterprises in Mukono district. Now, in this day and age where technological transformation is on a rise, one of the things businesses should look into embracing and is just e-commerce, how they can be able to market themselves online, create brand awareness and visibility. And when we look at this at Uganda's scope alone, of course, it's going to take some time to grow, because the rate or the percentages of the illiterate vis-a-vis the literate are really high. A number of people are literate enough to embrace digital transformation, whereas there is also a large portion of Uganda's fraternity which is very illiterate, and they still need a lot of lessons to be able to drop onto the trend of digital transformation. So we urge other people out there, NGOs that are not sponsored by the United States of America, to be able to at least reach a hand to the rural areas to teach them how they can be able to embrace or harness the power of digital transformation to grow their businesses. Moving forward again, the First Lady calls for Christian values in education, and the family feud Maz Lutaya's last funeral rites. Moving forward again, we see that Kano Nakalema mourns and celebrates her father's life, who was laid to rest yesterday. And of course, we observe a moment of silence for the lost soul. And moving forward again, we see that Lions in Uganda boost global fund with 236 million shillings. Now, the Lions Club International was formed in 1917 by a US business leader known as Melvin Jones, while the Lions Club International Foundation was founded in 1968 to provide grants that empower the service of members. Of course, we welcome in that contribution, for it will lead to the economic prosperity of Uganda. Now, that and more is what is making the headlines or making the stories in today's Daily Monitor, as well as the New Vision. So do not forget to grab yourself a copy, as I've earlier said and continuously repeated myself, so that you can keep ahead of the trends with the knowledge in circulation. And of course, as Smart Means Business and Smart 24, we are dedicated to keeping you updated. So stay tuned as we go for a break, and we shall be back with business news that is moving on in the East African community as well as international scope. Stay tuned.
Smart 24